Okay, so who are you and what are we here to talk about today?
Cool. My name is Matthew Scott, and I work on the Microsoft Word team, and we are here to talk about programmability with Open XML. It's some cool stuff.
Cool.
Cool. What I want to talk about are being able to write programs, your own applications, using Open XML. The new file formats for Office 2007, the new default XML-based file formats. And so let me just briefly talk about the outline of what I would like to be able to have solution developers actually produce. And the way I'm going to illustrate this is sort of a new example, it's sort of a different technique than you may have heard before. I'm actually going to show a case study, an actual tool that was written and been released as open source on the Codeplex.com website, which allows developers to see how, in a comprehensive example, how to actually manipulate Open XML. And also, the tool is a real tool that provides a user good too. It actually helps out with using Word. So again, I'm on the Word team, so a lot of what I'm saying will be very Word-centric, but can apply to all of Office and Office apps, especially Excel and PowerPoint, because they support the new OpenXML file formats. So let me just give the high-level view of the type of programs, how a program can work using, manipulating OpenXML. So we can start off with taking docx files. Those are the new file extension for OpenXML file formats. So given a docx file, the goal is for people to write programs that can actually parse them without having Office on the machine, as opposed to previous releases where when people wanted to manipulate Word documents, they actually needed to use OLE automation and actually tap into the object model interface for these applications. And that turns out to be pretty slow and actually not safe, especially for a server. So now the opportunity is to use just XML manipulation and having your own program's business logic handle this. So you can just be completely out of having the responsibility of having Word on your machine. So we can start off with docx files and be able to parse them and have a process to parse, a process to load certain aspects of that XML into your own program's data structures. So we have a loading phase. So again, I'm sort of outlining just how generally a program can work manipulating OpenXML. So you load into data structures. You can then have a user interface where a user can actually manipulate the data in those data structures. So, user interface, UI could have just written, to manipulate data. At this point, so this is on open, and then upon save, we actually can take the data from the data structures and save them to XML. So XMLize the data structures. So data structure to XML. And then from this point, we can repackage and get it back to docx. So this is the point at which applications, this is the domain of applications built to operate on OpenXML. And actually, this is the outline of how the tool I'm about to show you works. So before I can go into more details on the tool, I actually have to introduce some of the underlying concepts, some new concepts in Office 2007. So if we...
Okay. And this tool, as you said, is a tool that developers and users can use. And first we're going to take a look at how you built the tool, basically, or how you would build a tool like this, right?
Sure. And right before that, though, I want to talk about, I want to show the features that the tool actually works on and how it makes life easier and the motivations for it.
Okay.
And so I have to discuss some general concepts before I move forward, like the new features in Office 2007, like Open XML. What is it? It's the new packaging format, the new file format for Office applications. And it's just it uses standard technologies like zip and XML to represent Word documents or other Office documents. So let me show you very briefly. Starting off with a new Word document. This is Word 2007. So I'll just make a very simple document. Insert a picture, insert some text, and I can save this document out to the desktop. Close it, and you'll know that this is a zip package because I can actually rename it to .zip and leverage the Windows Shell zip program, compressed folders, and actually this is the Word document. It's broken up into parts. These are called XML parts and document parts inside of the Word document. And so we separated out document.xml, font tables, and so on. And for that picture I just saved, it's actually in the media folder. And so this is all parsable by your own applications.
A lot easier to get at that picture than it used to be.
Absolutely. You can actually swap in different pictures and so forth. Okay. So let me now talk about another feature. So I can actually bring it back to docx. You can actually still open it up in Word as a zip, but so a new feature that I have to introduce is the XML data store. It's the to put it very simply, it's actually just a bag inside or beneath the surface of the document. It's a bag of XML files. You can create your own custom XML and store them in this bag. And wherever this document goes, this bag goes with it. So you can store this very structured data, this data representation of your document, or you can store any kind of data you want. And this actually brings us one step closer to having structured documents, having separation of the presentation of the document from the actual data of the document. Because there's many scenarios like, say, writing a stock report where you have just pure data. You have the stock price, you have analysts, factors and things like that, and then you have the presentation. You want to make it look nice. And even though we have an XML format, it's still hard for developers to take out the data from the presentation. It's too much mire. So we have a data store where you can actually put that pure data and have a surface representation. So let me first show you the custom XML. That's the feature we call it. It's called custom XML. So because this is actually a developer's feature, this is an advanced feature. We actually didn't provide a user interface for it. You can get to it using the object model, but we're also releasing a bunch of tools to make it easier to work on these things. And actually the tool I'll show you is one of those tools. It provides a user interface for working with custom XML. So I'll show you the way you can do it out of box. And so you actually have to go to the Visual Basic Editor, and I can shortcut there by going to Alt F11. And in the Immediates window, I can add a custom XML part, like so. And I'll add a very simple XML document. So like that. And behind the scenes exists that XML. I save, and I can close and go back to the zip view. And now there's a folder called Custom XML inside of the package. And in there is the item representing our custom XML. I can double click on it to take a look. And it's simply our document, our XML document, which is cool. But it presents the problem. The problem is now presented, well, how do we show, or how do we get some of that data from that document, that XML document, onto our surface of our Word document? And the answer to that is a new feature in Office 2007, I'm sorry, in Word 2007, called Content Controls. So, Content Controls it's a very versatile feature. It's the ability to mark certain ranges in Word, certain regions, and control the content in them, and using sort of form-like controls. So, let me insert a content control off of the Developer tab. I will click a plain text content control. You can see here we have a bunch of different types, like drop-down lists, and even images and date pickers. So,
man, people out of the box don't see that Developer tab, right?
You're right. So to get to that tab, you actually go to Word Options, and in the Popular section, you can actually enable the Developer tab.
Got it.
So once it's enabled, you click on it, and you can get a content control. And you can add properties to it, like the title and a tag. A tag is actually not seen by the user. It's a feature that you can just add strings to, and you can later use in your program to parse out the content controls. You can see that string. So here we have a content control with the title zoo, and what the goal here is to be able to map that data that we recently added through the custom XML parts to this content control. We want this to be the surface level window to our data. So the way to do it out of the box is to go back to the Visual Basic Editor, and I'll access the content controls collection, and using the XML mapping object, I will use set mapping, and I actually remember the linkage to the content control and the data in the store is actually using XPath, which is the standard pointer language for pointing out XML inside of XML documents. So the simple XPath here was just X and Y, and we do it, and you see immediately the content control turns to foo, because now it reflects the data inside of the data store in that custom XML part, which is all great and all, but how does this scale? So what if I add more content controls? Say I add one to the header, right? It becomes kind of tricky. There's some brain dead actions you have to use to start linking them up. So there's obviously a need for a tool here to make this easier, and that's the tool I will introduce. So let me save this document, and we'll use this as our example document when exploring the tool. The tool is called the Word 2007 Content Control Toolkit, and again, available on Codeplex.com. And I'll show you it right now. This is the fishbowl state of the tool. I can open Word documents, so foo.docx, and you can see immediately on the left side all of the content controls. And so it's laid out in sort of an Explorer type way, so you can actually, it scales. If you have tons of content controls, they're all listed here. And you can see clearly which have been bound because of the XPath property exposed. And you can sort, you can find different content controls. So I have a sorting mechanism here by location. You can see this is the one in the main document, this is the one in the header. And now on the right side, we have the custom XML parts, the XML data that I introduced earlier. And so this is the tree view of it. And we actually have an edit view, which is just the raw XML. And so you'll notice up here in the namespace dropdown, this would actually list out all the custom XML parts you have in your document. So in this case, we only have one. And we have no namespace, so we can actually we can actually just add a namespace just to show you. And so the namespace changes. So say I want to add, so now I can very easily add new parts, new nodes to this XML document. So I'll add a Z, and I can now go back to the bind view, and I have a Z node exposed. And to bind, it's now much simpler. I don't have to set the XPaths or do any of that. All the XPaths you can see are generated on the fly when clicking on a node. And to do the binding, it's actually pretty WYSIWYG. You can drag this node onto the content control I wish to bind. So for the header, I want to bind to the Z node. And as soon as I drop, you can see the binding information. And if I double click on it, you can find out more information. The prefix mappings, the XPath, the custom XML ID, and so on. So this becomes a very easy way to bind your data to content controls. So if I save and I reopen this document, you'll see that the information has changed. So I would like to...
I'll bet there's a lot of XML behind the scenes we just didn't see, right? That if you were just to do this manually, we just saved ourselves a lot of complexity.
Yeah, to do this manually, you have to be aware of more of the details of the XML. You have to be aware of the XPaths, the positions in the XML document that you'd like to bind to. So now we have sort of a user interface to make that an easier process. So I showed only two content controls here. What happens when, in say a real-world document may have hundreds of content controls? Then it becomes very, very difficult to just use the Visual Basic Editor to bind. So I will show a document constructed that models a medical form. This document, actually, let's pull up the number of content controls. So I went back to the Visual Basic Editor, and I'll probe the object model, content controls, count. So you can see here there's actually 183 content controls in this document. And they're all over the place here. So the name, social security number, address, even all of these checkboxes are actually content controls. Even the picture is a content control. And so this particular document actually has behind the scenes a XML document that represents the data, the structured data of this document. And so it's a complex challenge to actually bind this. So let's show how this works inside of the tool. So I will close down this document and open up the Content Control Toolkit and open the medical chart. And so very quickly it loads and shows all of these content controls. You can see them here.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a representation of what they are here on the side, but I could actually sort by type. And you can see here all the plain text ones, the picture, the combo box, the date pickers, drop-down lists, etc.
Matt, why might somebody use a picture content control instead of just inserting a picture?
Cool. Good question. The picture content control allows programmers to actually be able to swap images very easily, because the images can be represented by XML using base64 encoded images. So actually the images themselves are just XML. And so it provides some opportunities for developers to be able to take out, so here's one core scenario. A lot of times in databases, images are stored in base64 encoding. And you can actually just take some of that data and rehydrate an image in your Word document by swapping out a picture content controls data.
Cool. So the picture is just part of that bag of XML parts you alluded to
exactly.
earlier.
And note that we provide a lot of easy ways to put in pictures and documents. A picture is naturally binary data, so in the package I showed you before, you can actually just store it as a picture, as a PNG file, PNG file, in the package, and that's the preferred way for many scenarios. Or you can store it as a base64 encoded just text in your XML document. So variety of ways So a lot of new opportunities for developers here.
Cool.
Okay, so again, you can see this is a great way of exploring all of the content controls. And here on the side, I have actually more XML documents inside of your Word document here. So here's the XML document that represents the data of this medical chart. So I'll go to the edit view, and I can actually double click on this to expand, and you can see a pretty rich XML document. And if I go back, you can very rapidly actually create nodes. So I'll just create a node like, boo, give it some data, is go back, and I can actually just start very rapidly binding.
Cool. And is this this example here? Is there some particular schema that this uses? That's
this one actually doesn't, but you can easily just as well have a schema.
okay.
There's one extra feature of this program that actually uses word automation. This feature is sort of an extra feature that if you do have Word on your system, it makes it, there's some advantage. This feature I'm about to show you actually makes finding the content controls in your document easier. So here we have a huge list, but you don't necessarily know where a content control is. Now, we have a tag that you can describe, but say you didn't fill out that tag. So I actually have this button here called Locate the Content Controls, and it's prompting me to save the document to keep it in sync. I'll save it. And what it's going to do here is do a little word automation to get it in view with the listing of all the content controls. And so now, this is sort of a locator, a finder of the content controls. So if I click on one, like patient name,
oh, that's cool.
yeah, it highlights inside of the Word document. And it works both ways, hooked up the events in both ways. So if I click here, it shows it there.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you. And you can even go down to one of these guys, and it shows it over there.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can actually, augment the content controls here for later use. So if I close down any one of the windows, they both close. So just a little automation, and for that code, you can find it again on the source code for this project. And actually, that's where I want to go next, is show the source code. How is this all done?
So now we're going to get back to that first diagram you drew about how the architecture of this.
Yeah, exactly. So let's do that. So I have the source code ready right here. It's all C#, and here it is. So the core part of this program I want to illustrate is actually the loading and saving of Open XML. So parsing and writing. So I have these three classes here: a package loader, a package navigator, and a package writer. The package navigator is really key to, in my opinion, to writing more comprehensive programs, because it abstracts a lot of the handling of packages, of manipulating the packages. And when I say packages, I mean Open XML packages. So it provides some abstraction to this manipulation of the package. And
this is just for maybe to state the obvious, you've got .NET 3.0 and the packaging API that's kind of the underlying API, right?
Yeah, forgot to say that, correct. To manipulate the Open XML files, we have in .NET 3.0, we have a new namespace, system.io.packaging, and it provides the abstraction for working with these zip files. Now, you don't even know they're zip files using this API. It's just a package, and it's nice to even build abstractions on top of that to make your business logic more clear.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my package navigator, I provide a lot of handy functions like getting the main parts, getting different parts, and so on. So let me go right away to the loader and explain that. So this is the main function for loading. I just start up a package navigator, which provides me, again, access to the package. And I'm going to first load content controls, and then I load the data store. So in this function, I go through each part in a Word document. Now, the way we construct Word documents, they are actually, there's different we call them story ranges, in a way. They're different parts of the document that can have content. And we have a main part, comments, endnotes, footnotes, headers, and footers. So if I just go to this function, which loads from a package part, what I do here is I get the data from the package stream, and I get it into an XML document, our friendly XML document structure that allows us to manipulate XML very easily. It provides a document object model, a DOM. And so here I quite simply get the package part stream. I get the stream here, and I just load it. I load an XML document off of that stream. Pretty simple. Now, my function to actually, now that I have an XML document, now comes the work of taking out of this file format, taking out of this file what is interesting to me and what is necessary. So for this program, and in this function, load content controls, I'll be looking for the content controls. So let's go to this function. So, so the way I first did this was I looked, when I saved a document, and I looked at what is the representation for a content control. And so I as a comment, I wrote out, how a content control is represented in XML. And I want to, this brings me to a point. I want to illustrate how we, as developers, we have actually a great tool at our disposal. A gigantic documentation project just has actually been on its way, and it's the standardization of OpenXML, our submitting of our OpenXML format, our specifications to the ECMA standard body. And this is great for developers because now we have a very clear and thorough documentation of the format. So, of course, I first saved just to see what the content control is represented by, but that's by no means the end to figuring out. I don't have to figure this out on my own. I don't have to deconstruct it like using a box. So let me show you. I downloaded from the ECMA website the documentation. So I'm going to say look up this node, STTPR. So everyone who's going to be working with OpenXML should have access to, should be using this PDF that is the documentation.
And maybe just for the record, we're recording this October 20th, and this was just recently locked down, all this stuff, right?
Yeah, recently locked down. So here is the documentation, and it is huge. It's altogether 6,000 pages. So I'm going to use our handy find feature to search for our node, and we found it, on the table of contents, and I can go right there. And right away, I'm provided with information about this, at first mysterious node. And so I have documentation, I have descriptions, I have examples. I can look at I can look at its parents. I can figure out, what this element is all about.
And is it fair to say that developer creates a docx and cracks it open and looks in there? Any tag they find, they can go find that somewhere in these 6,000 pages,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's the great part. I mean, before developers, if they try to manipulate the file format, they would have to, use, say, the binary format, and that has limited documentation. And mostly people, deconstructed it, figured out what happened, and now we have the documentation. It's standardized. It's being sent to ECMA, and now we have a great documentation to help out developers figure out how to manipulate the file format. So.
And maybe just to throw a plug in here, since it fits so well, openxmldeveloper.com is a great place to go to find the links to all this documentation.
Yeah, .org?
Either.
Either.
I guess, yeah, .org is what we're saying more often.
Okay.
They both map to the same place.
Cool. openxmldeveloper.org.
Yeah.
So back to the code.
Yep.
So quite simply, in this function, I just do a recursive search for this node. This is the XPath for that, the double slash. And for all the nodes that match it, I actually just load them into, so I load them into my model of that data. So in a data structure I call CC, Content Control, I actually just, I extract out that information and I load it into my data structure, and then I just store all those content control models in my list here. So yeah, in a program like the one I described, you need to have a data access layer, a layer of your program that is the model of the data. So when the user's using your program, they are really just manipulating data that's inside of this data access layer. And that's very clear in this code. So once I loaded up those data structures, now it's to the point where I just have a user interface right here, and a bunch of tools built into the user interface where people can drag and drop and do all kinds of stuff. And it's all in memory. It's all in my program's memory. Word has nothing to do with this at this point.
Cool, Matt. This is really exciting. We haven't had a tool like this yet, and I think a lot of guys are going to, guys and gals who are writing Open XML code are going to be working with content controls now like they couldn't in the past. It was so hard to do, and now this makes it so simple.
Yeah.
And also, as you say, a good example of kind of how to approach this stuff.
Definitely.
So thanks for taking us through this. Once again, where can people find this if they want to?
They can find this on the Codeplex.com website, and they can download the source and contribute and be part of the community.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Okay, great.